In this tutorial, we're going to continue along doing our detailing of the helmet. So we're going to add in an inset to the back half of the top of the helmet. We're going to add in one of these beveled insets that we've done around the side, top of the helmet and back of the helmet, just down near where the front lights are at the helmet. And we're also going to add in a little cut to the side just below where the lights are on the side of the helmet and fill that in with a little bit of extra detail as well. This is another instance of one of the errors that were caused by myself using the Alt-S to scale in the details in the previous episode. So if you guys use the scale method that I suggested, you should avoid these. They're not too hard to fix up. It's just a little bit more unnecessary work that we don't really need to go through and do. So yeah, that's just me fixing these ones up here. It's nothing too important, especially if you went through and did the alternative scale method that I suggested. You'll notice that the geometry here isn't completely straight, so we're just going to go ahead, select those 5 vertices, but we're going to have the vertice on the top left be the final one that we select, so that that's the active vertice, so that when we use the snapping to that top row of vertices, it snaps the active vertice to the one that we're holding control over. I just want to go ahead here and add in an edge between these 2 points and do an edge slide down. You'll just notice that the shading that we have where we have the inset detail and that connecting to the semicircle part here, it sort of stretches out the edges and it doesn't look amazing. So I know that results in us having 2 triangles around that area, but we still maintain consistent shading around the edges despite those triangles, so it's of no concern to us to have those there. Here we're going to do another one of those details similar to the ones that we did in the previous episode on the side, top and back of the helmet, where it's that little inward extrusion. I actually use a different method here where I push it in on the x-axis and then scale it on the z. It may not be the most consistent and or perfect sort of way of doing it, but it still provides nice results and it avoids a lot of the problems caused by the Alt-S method that I mentioned in the previous episode as well as this episode. So this should just provide a cleaner result. I do, however, use the inset method here. I still stand by the fact that I think it would be smarter to hide the faces at the upper and lower limits of this detail. Go ahead and add in a cut through the middle of all the faces and bevel that cut. It's very similar to what we did with the visor inset detailing in the first episode. However, given how much of a minute detail this is on the helmet, I think we can get away with using the inset method here. You'll notice here that the face on the visor brim isn't completely in line with that detail that we just cut out. So the way I remedy this is going ahead and filling in a face on the other side so that I can do an edge slide. It might have been smarter for me to have just used the normal input of that edge, and watching this back, I think it would have saved you a lot of time if you just went ahead, selected that edge there, got the normal input from it, and then just slid it forward to properly match up. I do it a completely different way. This will also work. However, watching it back, I think it's a little bit unnecessary now. I just noticed a little bit of pinching around this area. I probably spend a bit more time on it than I need. It's really just a matter of doing some relax operations and doing some edge slides to push these vertices a little bit further into the mesh so that you don't have any of the bumping or pinching that we have on it. As I said, probably spend a little bit too much time on this area. I might speed it up for you guys just so it doesn't consume as much of your time. I mentioned in one of the previous tutorials that it's rather unideal that we have a pole sitting right on this edge here. So right now we're going to go ahead and do some retopology of this front area so that we have a nice supporting loop just along that edge there, and we won't have that weird shading inconsistency where we had the pole initially. So you should notice now that we have that nice supporting loop running along the length of that edge. The shading on the edge is much nicer, and you don't have that weird stretching down where we initially had that pole. I'm going to go ahead here and select one of the faces along the side of the helmet here and set the 3D origin to that selected face, as we want to bring in a plane that we can use for a Boolean operation in a bit to model in a bit of detail that exists on the side of the helmet here. I know it doesn't exist in the reference images that we're using, although if you look at our reference board, you'll notice the fact that it does exist over there. So I just wanted to bring it in. I think it's a nice little neat detail, and I think the helmet can probably deal with it, because for the most part, a lot of the details are actually populated at the back of the helmet, and the front and sides of the helmet are a little bit more simple. So I think it's a nice little addition to add, just to break up the flow of the visual language of the design. I'm just trying to have the edges of the square there line up with the hard edges that we've got marked on the helmet. I am then just using the snapping tool to align it along the normal Z axis to that of the actual helmet, just making the Boolean a little bit more consistent. personally, despite the fact that we modeled it at the center of all these faces, I kind of feel like this part at the front just tapers in a little bit too much, even though I know it's actually in the center of everything. I just felt like dragging it down a bit sort of helped with the way it looked. It made it look a little bit more even though it's probably not. But personally, in my mind, I think that looks right. However, you can do it to whatever looks right in your eyes. So as we wrap up the modelling of this little piece to fill in the detail inset, that will bring us to the end of our 15th tutorial. So we are almost there, guys. We are 3/4 of the way through this entire tutorial, and the helmet is looking rather good, if I do say so myself. Funnily enough, we do actually go ahead in one of the later tutorials and I delete this mesh that we have selected right now. I delete most of it at least, and just make the bevel that we have at the front a little bit larger, and I think I make the depth of that inset a little bit deeper as well, but we'll get to that a little bit later. You can go ahead and change that now if you like. The design didn't sit with me well at the time. So I shall see you guys in the next tutorial.